Jesus, Buddha, Martin Luther King Jr., Sam Altman. When the world feels chaotic and our problems, well, they feel too big to solve, we've often looked to messianic figures to save us. Be they religious or political leaders, geniuses, or revolutionaries, we get the saviors best suited to our times. And in this age of uncertainty, the Wonder Boys of Silicon Valley have stepped up, promising radical new products and innovations sure to revolutionize our lives.
Bitcoin mining is going to save the world.
Hey computer, like discover all of physics.
In the future, where you can just use AR, VR, and teleport in the morning to the office and show up as a hologram, I think that's going to be pretty sweet.
I've got 7 minutes to tell you how crypto can save the world.
Artificial intelligence, it is a renaissance. It is a golden age.
From colonizing Mars to building artificial general intelligence, the boldest human initiatives today are not being undertaken by governments, but by tech CEOs. And this makes sense, right? Because many tech corporations now have market caps that rival nation states. It feels like we've given the folks who run them more political power than our governments. Whether it's our taxpayer dollars subsidizing their rockets which are awesome and have never spontaneously blown up when they were supposed to go that way, or our representatives allowing the artificial intelligence industry to self-regulate, because that worked out really good with stuff like Facebook.
But it's clear now that we didn't do enough to prevent these tools from being used for harm as well.
Like anyone imbued with just nearly unlimited power, these tech giants promise to wield it wisely, insisting that their endeavors will be a net positive for humanity and for their investors' pocketbooks. And rather than viewing this phenomenon with suspicion, many seem to welcome it. From LinkedIn bros extolling the virtues of AI to Elon fans donating their brains to science despite all those dead monkeys. And even if you suspect tech giants don't have your best interest at heart, their vision for the future might feel like the only hope we have. So what does our faith in technology say about humanity? Is believing in technological progress simply rational? Or is there something much deeper going on when someone swears the latest AI video generating tool is gonna usher in a utopia? Well, we're gonna try to find it out in this video on why tech won't save us. Okay, before we get into it, I want to quickly show you an article I've been looking at. It's called Musk's Neuralink Eyes More Test Subjects for its Brain Tech. When reading about topics like this, it can often be confusing because some news sources might say, oh, this technology is groundbreaking and safe, and others might be saying, actually, it's dangerous. And there's a reason for this. Many media outlets have financial ties to Silicon Valley companies. As a result, they may present biased reporting, avoiding negative stories about their partners or sponsors. And this is why I've been using Ground News. Now, if you haven't heard of it yet, Ground News is a website and app created to empower readers to navigate our complex media landscape. They aggregate articles from over 50,000 news sources around the world and across the political spectrum, and this allows you to compare headlines, see the reliability of a source, and then check out where the bias leans. Now let's get back to this article and I'll show you how it works. You can see here that this story has been covered by more than 47 sources. And then over here you can see where the source's bias leans on the bias distribution chart. You can also check out the factuality rating, which is an assessment of the reporting practices of a news publication based on the average score of 3 different rating systems. And you can also see who owns each source from the ownership chart. Now, all these factors can influence framing, and you can compare how the biases of different news organizations affect their coverage of a given topic. Another feature that I really dig on Ground News is the My News bias feature, and it shows me an in-depth report on the news I'm consuming, from what sources I read the most to the bias breakdown, factuality distribution, media ownership, as well as countries I've read news about. And it's really hard sometimes to not stay in my own echo chamber, whether that's reading the same publications or the same authors, and this tool really helps me keep track of how I'm consuming media, and it's especially valuable during times right now where there's so much political news happening and it's hard to figure out what's biased and what's not. So I can't recommend it enough. Now, if you want to check it out for yourself, you can go to ground.news/wisecrack and give it a try. Now, when you sign up through my link, you're going to get 40% off the Vantage plan, which is what I've been using to get unlimited access to all features. But for now, we got to get back to figuring out if our new gods are coming from Silicon Valley. Now, tech luminaries have a lot of ideas about how to solve the world's problems. They'll fix our transportation woes with AI-driven cars that will make accidents a thing of the past.
A Tesla, believed to be on autopilot, started braking, causing an 8-car pileup on Thanksgiving.
They'll end aging with teenage blood plasma injections. Fun fact, I'm actually 74 years old, but we've been having people donate their blood to our channel that I've been injecting myself with. So if I seem like I have the wisdom of an old man and the body of a decaying middle-aged man, well, that's why. They'll help regular folks take the power back from Wall Street with decentralized cryptocurrency markets. They're even building their own utopian communities. From a futuristic town in California to a Mediterranean crypto state to a libertarian city in Honduras that isn't actually a city, but a platform that delivers governance as a service. And while as far as we know, none of the folks involved are ordained ministers, plenty seem to have messiah complexes. And to be clear before we keep going, we're not critiquing tech as such right now. We think technology is great. It can be emancipatory, liberatory, make lives better in many ways. We're talking about the people behind modern tech behemoths. Okay, so just wanted to be clear before we kept going. Now, messianic figures exist across world religions, from Judaism to Christianity to Islam to Buddhism to Hinduism to many indigenous faiths. Generally taking the form of a priest, king, or warrior, the Messiah's role is to usher in a utopian world, often after winning an apocalyptic battle against evil. Philosophers, including Emmanuel Levinas, have identified a messianic longing as fundamental to the human condition. Walter Benjamin sees the messianic moment as a rupture in history, where a transformative societal change is truly possible, which is why there is often a thin line between a more spiritual messianic hope and a more political, even revolutionary type of messianism. According to political scientist Samuel P. Huntington, America in particular has long fostered a mingling of religion and patriotism in the form of a civil religion, populated by biblical archetypes, including the Messiah. In Huntington's telling, this effectively makes Abraham Lincoln America's Jesus Christ. Unsurprisingly, we see many American leaders present or be perceived as messiahs. FDR considered himself to be God's agent, and many Americans dubbed him a prophet, according to historian Gary Scott Smith. Same with self-described crusader Ronald Reagan. And in recent years, we've seen both political parties rally with messianic fervor behind charismatic presidents. But the messianic doesn't just describe one person. Historian Robert T. Hanley identifies an American messianic consciousness, as old as our city on the hill. It describes a historical tendency to view itself as the world's savior, either in a passive sense as a role model for other nations, or in an active sense, as in doing wars that sometimes help other nations. Now, the idea of messianic moments, which inaugurate new ways of living, can help explain why humanity has long seen messianic potential in transformative technology. Historian David W. Noble traces our faith in technology back 1,000 years to Europe's medieval ages, when Benedictine monks fueled an early industrial revolution in the form of windmills, water mills, and agricultural innovations. These mechanical arts elevated things like humble farming to the status of transcendent holy labor, a godly pursuit of perfection that would return us to the Garden of Eden. And even players in the secular scientific revolution saw their work as serving the purpose of spiritual transcendence. America's belief in the messianic power of technology has been prevalent since Columbus, master of marine technology, became convinced that his discovery of the new world signaled the end of the old. But according to scholar Eric Davis, in particular since the early 19th century, America's enthusiasm for religion and for technology fed off and amplified each other. Techno-utopianism was exemplified by the Freemasons, whose belief in the great architect of the universe fueled an obsession with innovation. Their ranks included pioneers in everything from the railroad to the automobile to the machine gun, which, cool, I guess. The engineer became a cultural hero, synonymous with progress. Hey, shout yourself out in the comments if you're an engineer, and then everyone else, look through, find those people, and reply with, you're a cultural hero. Everyone deserves to be praised every now and then. I'll do another profession, another video, so don't worry. No one's going to be left out. I love all my children equally, and you're all special. Railroad companies supplied clergymen with talking points about the morality of railroads and commissioned romanticized paintings and photographs of their machinery, while canals and electric streetcars were seen as synonymous with democracy. Dubbed a wizard, Thomas Edison, Time magazine's Man of the Millennium, was world famous by age 35, despite not actually inventing but merely perfecting the light bulb. Electricity was viewed as magical, its ability to light up urban nightscapes the stuff of gods. When electricity was transformed into communication via the telegraph, spiritual ecstasy reached a new height. 15,000 New Yorkers marched to celebrate the laying of the transatlantic cable, even though it took 16 hours to interpret Queen Victoria's inaugural telegram, because of her weird British accent. Espoused as an inherently moralizing force, the telegraph was seen as the perfect medium for Christian missionaries to spread the word about salvation. Catherine Albanese concludes that the only real new popular religion in America was one of radical empiricism that aimed to turn human beings into gods. Now, in this mythology, airplanes and space travel were seen as miraculous, bordering on the divine. Even nuclear weapons were imbued with messianic qualities, optimistically dubbed weapons of life by one atomic scientist. Weapons of life is a thing that someone said, and they meant it earnestly. Silicon Valley has perpetuated this grand American mythology. Since its earliest days, it's espoused what political theorist Langdon Winter calls myth information, or the almost religious conviction that widespread adoption of technology would generate utopian progress by fostering democracy, empowering the masses, and bridging cultural barriers. To be clear as well, there's lots of really good writing from people talking about how technology can and has and still could bring about good stuff. There's people who still take this seriously. Early internet evangelists waxed poetic about the spiritual power of the web to transcend time and space, assuring early investors they were contributing to an intensely moral project. Cycles of media hype have promised that everything from Web 2.0 to crypto to AI will fundamentally change our world, for the better, of course. A recent manifesto from Silicon Valley old-timer Mark Andreessen evangelically hails his community as conquerors who believe in nature but also believe in overcoming nature. He espouses lifting all restraints off capitalism and technological advancement while railing against enemies with zombie ideas that include sustainability, trust and safety, tech ethics, and social responsibility, all of which stymie progress. But what happens when we equate unrestrained technology with progress, spiritual or otherwise? Put simply, we begin to see all technology as inherently good. But as Paul Virilio puts it, when you invent the ship, you also invent the shipwreck. When you invent the plane, also invent the plane crash. And when you invent electricity, you invent electrocution. Every technology carries its own negativity, which is invented at the same time as technical progress. In other words, technological progress has unintended consequences, some of which can be not the best. Let's look back to 1820, when the industrial American factory was greeted as a triumph of man's domination over nature. Why do men always have to dominate everything, Can't we just vibe with nature? These temples of efficiency would remake society by reducing costs and manual labor. But the majesty of the machines overshadowed the painful human labor required to keep them running. Because small-scale craftsmen couldn't compete with the lower prices of factory-produced goods, they ended up having to go to work at those very factories. Income inequality spiked. Ironically, rather than reducing labor time, laborers worked more as profit-minded corporations ramped up the production of cheap goods. New technologies like industrial factories often manifest as what sociologist Nicholas Thoburn calls a means of consolidating a particular form of the extraction of value. Essentially, the wealth once spread across many craftspeople making products was now concentrated within factories, where it largely flowed to the owner. Similarly, people just lost their friggin' minds over railroads, which united the country and facilitated commerce. But implementing them nationally demanded rigid, often oppressive managerial hierarchies that culminated in the invention of the modern corporation, and which gave us our first billionaires. Thank you, Jesus, for billionaires. We know that we only have them because you made them. Praise God. And railway implementation was hardly neutral. Government officials, who were often bribed, gifted railroad companies millions of acres of public land, which displaced indigenous tribes, along with farmers and ranchers, in the name of innovation. Now, technology causing income inequality wasn't new to the Industrial Revolution. When medieval monks innovated mechanical labor, the increase in production required worker hierarchies that transformed a select few monks into feudal lords. Since then, technology and its benefits have often been spearheaded and gatekept by elites, ranging from the British Royal Society to the Freemasons. The extractive power of technology and its resulting hierarchies has only become more pronounced. Over the 20th century, Noble argues, the technology of manufacturing, financial, and service corporations have served to discipline, de-skill, and displace untold millions of people, while concentrating global power and wealth into fewer and fewer hands. That's an uncool triple D, like discipline, de-skill, and displace, uncool triple D, diners, drive-ins, and dives, cool triple D. We see this perfectly embodied in the business models of Silicon Valley. Tech messiahs have grown wealthy via innovation, but also, and maybe more often, by profiteering off government resources and exploiting labor. The Valley's rise in the 1950s was the result of billion-dollar government war grants funded by taxpayers, which fueled a surge of technological advancements, including the computer and the internet. So if you like computer, think war. Even the creation of Google's algorithm was funded by a grant from the National Science Foundation, while Apple's early days benefited from government investment. Hilariously, the internet wasn't initially seen as a profitable endeavor. A military research agency even tried to sell the first computer network to AT&T, who declined. While the NSF funded early internet connection, its commercial potential soon emerged. And by 1995, the internet was fully commercialized. The government contracted it out to private companies who would accrue all the profits. As critic Mariana Mazzucato observes, even much of Steve Jobs' success was attributable to massive amounts of public investment behind the computer and internet revolutions, which innovated many of the features most beloved in his iPhone, including the click wheel, GPS, touchscreen, and Siri. And just like previously world-changing industries, tech propagates polarization in the workforce. It handsomely compensates a select few managers and engineers while contracting 40 to 50% of its labor out to temps who are typically massively undercompensated, sometimes even in violation of the law. And even engineers are technically undervalued given their importance, such that in 2010, the US Justice Department found that top CEOs like Steve Jobs and Eric Schmidt of Google had, for years, colluded to artificially deflate engineer wages. The ugly underbelly of the idyllic tech industry manifests all over the world, as author Keith A. Spencer recounts. Consider the mines in the eastern Congo, where coltan, essential to products like the iPhone, is harvested. When Sony's PlayStation 2 created a spike in demand in 2000, coltan's price increased 1,000%. Militias then forced civilians into slave labor in a conflict that escalated into a devastating civil war. Or consider China's Foxconn factories, where the overly ambitious seasonal demands from Apple created a culture of grueling work and abusive management that led to the installation of suicide nets under the roofs and barbed wire on the windows. Or take Amazon distribution centers, purposefully established in places of high unemployment and low economic opportunities, where pressure on workers to deliver fast results comes with serious physical and psychological costs. The glorious discounts of Prime Day 2023, for example, were accompanied by a 48% spike in worker injuries. But I'm so glad you got that blender for 17% off. You know, you used it 2 times the week you got it, and it just sat there, but it's fine. Today, you can see the blatant disrespect for workers manifest in the zeal over artificial intelligence, which has made a few people rich off the promise of making the rest of us redundant. Just as railroad companies helped themselves to American land, and internet technology was funded by public investment to create private profits, the basis of the AI revolution has been the theft of the work of writers, artists, filmmakers, and yes, YouTube creators. At least we're important enough to get our work stolen, I guess. So the question remains, why have we ever trusted tech to save us? Okay, so you might be asking, well, sure, but what is the alternative to this faith in technology? Should we just unplug the internet and go back to the dark ages? You know, should we just become Luddites? Well, contrary to what you might think, Luddites weren't just technophobic on principle. Skilled British craftsmen who had apprenticed for 7 years to learn their trade, Luddites embraced technologies that made them better at their jobs. But they saw certain forms of industrial technology cheapening the value of their labor and making worse products while undermining their thriving artisan communities. Legally banned from unionizing, they fought back by smashing machines and setting factories on fire. As one Luddite noted, these so-called labor-saving machines' sole purpose was to reduce skilled laborers to unskilled ones, and thus to increase the precariousness of life among the workers and to intensify the labor of those who serve the machines. Serving the industrial machine feels like a direct predecessor to the phenomenon that technology critic Jathan Sadowski calls Potemkin AI, or services that purport to be powered by sophisticated software but actually rely on humans acting like robots. Think of Amazon's physical stores, which bragged about an AI-powered checkout service that charged you as you walked out. It was actually manned by underpaid workers in India who were forced to take note every time you grabbed a package of skin-on chicken thighs. The use of Potemkin AI, Sadowski argues, obfuscates the fact that many apparently automated tasks still need to be done or at least proofed by humans. This gives the illusion that we already live in an AI-powered world. And it can seem dazzling because the religious power of new technology still looms large. As Noble writes, the powerful aura that today's advanced technologies cast does not derive solely from their novelty or their mystifying complexity. It also derives from their literal realization of the virtual projects willed by the wizards and alchemists of an earlier age. Magic is technology's unconscious, its own irrational spell. The supernatural quality of ChatGPT writing your Psych 101 essay can feel magical. And when we're in awe or even just a little bit afraid, it might be hard to call bullshit on ChatGPT's half-baked thesis sentence, or to even ask critical questions about whether we should be consuming 2.9 watt-hours of electricity just to avoid doing the abnormal psychology reading. Genuine question, if anyone's used ChatGPT to write a paper for school or work, tell us how it went. I'm just curious. And I'm not above you doing that. I think a lot of work and school stuff is useless, and if that's how you're using technology to do better stuff, more power to you. And perhaps more depressingly, it's because we also feel like no one is coming to our rescue. After all, you don't need a messiah unless existing powers are failing you. Our government doesn't seem to have the political will or power to solve problems like rampant inequality or subpar transportation or a health insurance industry. When a shiny new startup promises the answers to your healthcare woes, it can be tempting to trust their cute little icon. Guys, I think fascism is going to happen, and it's going to be because of cute fonts. Still, it feels particularly egregious when tech evangelists extol the magical power of innovation in a world where 1 in 4 people don't have clean drinking water. Nearly 1 in 2 don't have access to basic sanitation, and over 2.5 billion people still don't have access to the internet. But Noble argues that technological innovation isn't serving humanity's basic needs precisely because it's never been fueled by that motivation. It's been fueled by religious fervor. He writes that tech gurus prioritize the loftier goals of transcending such mortal concerns altogether, such that the needs neither of mortals nor of the earth they inhabit are of any enduring consequence. In other words, tech evangelists' religious fervor for abstract things like openness, transparency, financial freedom, and augmented intelligence, as well as their equally religious fervor for the almost supernatural amounts of wealth they've acquired, outweigh their considerations of whether their innovation is actually making things better or not. What's more, Noble argues that our extravagant hopes for a utopian world of technology are misplaced, because uncritically idealizing profit-oriented technology may prevent us from figuring out how to materially make things better for more people in the here and now. Or, as Gil Germain writes, because it is precisely by idealizing technology that we come to unthinkingly embrace it. Ultimately, when we put our messianic faith in the priestly class of tech bros, we forget that they aren't like Jesus, feeding thousands with a few loaves and fishes. When they claim to be helping us solve our biggest problems, their aid isn't fueled by a utopian faith. If it was, they would demonstrate care for their workers and the environment. They would pay attention to the myriad unintended side effects of their innovation and how the economic and societal harms of their technology span the globe. Still, our human desire for the messianic can't be reasoned away, and it makes sense that as trust in governments and institutions continues to deteriorate, we would turn to tech for answers. But interestingly, Walter Benjamin postulated that the messianic break in time, the revolution that would explode the continuum of history and transport us to a utopian world, might not be the result of explicitly forward progress, but of just the opposite. As he writes, Marx says that revolutions are the locomotive of world history, but perhaps it is quite otherwise. Perhaps revolutions are an attempt by the passengers on this train, namely the human race, to activate the emergency brake. In other words, maybe the real messianic break, the real revolution doesn't rely on radical technological transformation, but rather radical societal change. If there are tens of thousands of automobile deaths a year, well, maybe the answer isn't self-driving cars. Maybe it's massive government investment in safe, accessible public transit. If much of the Earth is rapidly becoming less habitable, maybe the answer isn't to relocate to a whole new planet. Maybe it's taking aggressive steps to actually halt climate change. If millions of people want to make art but are too busy working 3 jobs, maybe the answer isn't shitty AI art generators. Maybe it's universal basic income or fixed housing prices, which would make living the life of an artist a lot more possible for more people. That is, maybe revolution doesn't come from a tech bro changing the nature of human intelligence. Maybe it comes from using our collective intelligence to say no to his environment-killing, theft-based, hallucinating technology. Technology that promises us a new and better way of life, but in reality moves us further and further away from collective liberation. I realize that this video, is you're watching it on YouTube, which is owned by Google, probably on an Apple product or something else, with an internet provider and all that. And I get it. I get the irony here. But I still want to know what you all think about all of this. So please let us know, do you think that there's actually some emancipatory, salvific potential in tech? Is no one coming to save us? Is it somewhere in the middle? Genuinely want to know what you think. I want to give a huge shout out before anyone leaves to my favorite little group of messiahs, our patrons. Now we got a link in the description to check out our Patreon community. It's a huge way to support the channel. Got a bunch of different levels. For most of them, you're getting all your videos early with no ads. You're getting exclusive podcast, video content, access to our Discord server, and more. And again, it's a huge help. So check that link out. If you're unable to do that, screw it. It's great that you're here. I really appreciate that. So thank you for watching the video. Thank you for liking and subscribing and leaving comments. It helps us so much. And, in the meantime, how about we all take our lead from the 2.5 billion people without access to the internet, and for the next few hours, let's just all act like we don't have internet and see how we feel. I'll see you on the other side of that.